Okay, I'm just going to do a quick test. Would somebody give me a wave or something if you can hear me? Great, thank you.
I hear you.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. And can you see the guide on my screen?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mhm.
We will get started. We'll give everybody an extra minute or two to log in, and then we will get started. All right. Well, at least I have a couple folks that I can see their smiling faces. Thank you, guys. It's always interesting as an instructor of a Zoom class when everyone is just a black screen with their name or just with a static photo. I very much feel like I'm talking to myself. So if I can see at least a few of your faces, I do greatly appreciate it. And I also know that I am guilty as the next person of not wanting to share my face when it's not me presenting. So I understand if you would rather be, stay behind your screen, that's okay too. Or if you're somewhere that doesn't have a camera, that's okay too. So I'm a huge fan of starting things on time. We're almost on time. My computer says 11:02. So we'll consider that mostly on time. And we will go ahead and get started. So my name, for those of you that I haven't met before, my name is Tabitha Gusler. I am the team leader at Keller Williams Excel Realty over in Westerville on Polaris Parkway. I have taught almost every session of Ignite over the years. I've previously taught our Career Development New Agent course and numerous other KW and non-KW courses. Have gotten, I think, pretty good with Zoom and with sharing screens and having things available for you. I do want to share a couple of things with you today. With your permission, rather than using the PowerPoint, I tend to like to use the actual guide that we have pulled up here, and that's the one that is available for you to download. Or before we finish up, if there's things that I show you along the way that you like, including I do have a couple of just real basic tools that I've developed that I'll share with you. If you'd like to get those by email, then you can just drop me your email in the chat, or I will put my email up here in the chat box as well to everyone. And if you'd like to send me a, sort of a private email and request whichever pieces that you like, I'm happy to send them to you, right? So this session is, I believe, is it number 8? No, I should have hit my chat box. It's number 6 in the progression. And so by this point, we assume that you really already have the fundamentals of working with clients, presenting listing consultations, making a listing active, that you've already moved through sort of buyer consultation, that you've already, of course, shown homes, and now you're in a position to either make offers or receive offers. So the way that this morning is set up is, I'm guessing probably the first 45 minutes or so is really going to be looking at it from the buyer's agent perspective. So we're going to talk about preparing to write an offer, contacting the listing agent, getting information, consulting with your client, and then creating and presenting the offer. Then we will kind of reverse and go to the other side of the coin, and probably spend about 15 minutes or so talking about communication as a listing agent. How can you sort of prepare buyer's agents who are going to be sending you offers, and then also some strategies, both from a buyer's agent standpoint and a listing agent standpoint, for a low inventory market. Because I really want this to be helpful and timely. And as much as we can use some of the tools that are here, I think sometimes masterminding a little bit and sharing with you some sort of real world experiences that I and others have had with making and receiving offers in the current environment is even more helpful, or at least it has been to me in the past. I do not expect us to need a full 2 hours today. In fact, if we go all the way up until 12:30, it will be, probably just to share additional tools, answer questions, things like that. So with that said, I wanted to ask that if there's anything really specific around making and receiving offers that you would love to make sure that you get answered in this course, would you please put it in the chat box, and make sure that in the to area that you choose that it sends to everyone. I'd love for the questions to go to everybody, because a lot of times someone else might have the same question that you have, or they might, your question might kind of trigger something that they would also like to learn, and we can all just kind of learn from each other. The other thing is, I would love if everyone's not muted all the time. So if at any point you have a comment, we talk about a situation that you've been in before and you'd like to contribute how you handled it, I would love to hear from you. We've got quite a few folks on today, and I would really love for this to be a mastermind session, not a lecture, right? I'm not a good lecturer. I'm a good conversation leader. So hopefully we can make this a conversation. Does anyone have any questions, or is anyone having trouble seeing the screen, or any sort of tech things that we can tackle before we get started? Okay, well then let's just roll right along. We'll skip all of the notices and all that good stuff. And so here's really the outline that we're going to follow for today. We're going to get ready to write the offer. Of course, we're going to write the offer. And I will kind of walk you briefly through the new updated 2020 residential purchase contract through Columbus Realtors that we use. Because we have agents from multiple KW offices, we're not going to go through the accompanying documents that you should have with an offer, but you should be working with those either through your team leader, through your broker, through your productivity coach to make sure that you are also creating all of the additional documents that you need to be compliance approved at the time of the offer. And mostly what we're going to focus on today are the tools and the conversations that you can use to prepare your clients for the current market environment and to put them in the best possible position to have their offer received while still making sure that they understand the risk associated with the type of offer that they make. Right? So I love this, and this has been in previous Ignites, but this one is built out to a little bit more detail than we've seen before. This checklist to prepare an offer. And really, I'll share with you the time to have these conversations and to have a checklist like this to prepare an offer is not when it's time to write the offer, right? The time to be aware of this and maybe even to have a lot of these conversations with your buyers is pretty early on. I'd say not before you start showing homes, but once you feel like your buyer is serious, right? You've got a pre-approval in hand. Of course, you've got your consumer guide already signed and you're starting to have a conversation about making offers. That's a time when I would share something like this and then the additional tool that I'll show you here in just a minute with your folks. From a personal best practices standpoint, what I have always done is gone ahead and created the contact in command, created the opportunity, and then loaded into the opportunity the consumer guide and at least one version of the pre-approval letter for the client before we ever make any offers. I also do like to have a conversation with them and with their approval, have a conversation with their lender contact on their pre-approval, because I like to know from their lender sort of what are your hours and what is your response time if we need a new pre-approval letter, we need a new dollar amount with it, or I do really like to present offers with address specific pre-approval letters. That's not possible from every lender, but it would be good to know upfront if that's an option for you, for your clients. Right. So this is also suggesting that you produce a CMA for the property that your client is going to be purchasing. This is extremely important, and it really does need to be as updated as possible. I think that if someone hasn't purchased a home in the last few years, and or if they're being advised by someone who hasn't purchased a home in the last few years, then they may assume that it still works the way that it did a long time ago, right? And anybody unmute and let me know what do you think I mean by that?
Well, one thing would be they would get approved after they've made the offer, not prior to.
Yeah, it might mean they can get a pre-approval later. And our contract even is still set up for that, right? Does anyone else have had a client a few years ago that bought a home, or have a current client whose parents are advising them on things like, we'll never offer more than 95% of the asking price? You guys ever heard that? Right? Some yes, some no.
I had a client whose parents made sure that we included a carpet allowance.
Okay. Was their offer accepted?
No, it wasn't.
Hey, I had a feeling, but I didn't want to assume.
No.
Right. And so that's, because the current environment and the inventory shortage that we're in is so unique to right now, I feel like that's why you need to do a CMA. doing a CMA, if you have clients who need some additional education, or, you know, we've all, if you've worked with enough buyers, you've had one that thought they could lowball everything. And they knew they weren't going to get it, but they had you writing offers for it anyway, right? Or, you know, folks who, you know, I've had folks that have been absolutely in love with something, but there was some sticking point for them on not feeling comfortable offering full price, right? For whatever reason. And then obviously they didn't get the home and they were upset. So doing a CMA is going to show them a few things. Number one, it's going to show them what other things they're selling for, of course. But what you really want to look for there is, what are the average days on market for that area? And are there homes that are closing at over asking price? It's not going to be the case in every area for every listing, but it is far more common today than it was even 12 months ago. Right? So if you don't know how to do a CMA, or you have mistakenly in the past only used that for a listing presentation, absolutely important to do right now. And when working with buyers in an area where you know that you're in a multiple offer situation, the conversation with the client is really, hey guys, sort of, we know what it's worth on paper. And now the conversation is, what is it worth to you? Right? So we know what it's worth on paper, and what is it worth to you? Because that's the number where things are really selling. And I'll talk with you about some additional contingencies or language that you can include if their what's it worth to you number is higher than the what's it worth on paper number. Right? You should review tax records and information about pricing history. That is somewhat helpful. Today, it will be more helpful when we're in more of a buyer's market, because you'll want to just make sure that everything is up to date. They're not upside down, anything like that. It is good to know that and make sure that they're up to date on taxes and things like that. I also like to review tax records, because that's how I fill in my offer with seller information. Right? As a listing agent, I love me some complete offers that have everything I could possibly need already popped in there, and it could be very easy. If my client's willing to accept terms, I can just throw down a signature. Right? Here's a funny one. Has anybody ever gotten bitten by this one? Ensure the property is still available. These days, what we're doing is we're calling before we schedule the showing and making sure it's still available, and finding out if there's any time frame in which we need to hurry up and move up our showing. I tend to pull up the status the day of the showing, make sure it still shows active, and call again or text again and say, hey, have you received any offers? We're very interested based on the photos, and we're heading out there today. Is there a time by which I need to send you an offer? Right? And making sure that I'm empowering my clients with that information before we even go, right? There have been times where if we were really interested in a property, that we have pre-written an offer and had it all ready to go, then we go and show the property, so that if they love it, all we have to do is sign and send, right? When speaking to the listing agent, build rapport and gather as much information about the seller and the property as you can. And this is where I say, hey, listen, they might not answer, but that doesn't mean you can't ask the questions, right? Can you share with me, why are your sellers moving, right? Is there anything in the home that they prefer to leave behind, right? What is their ideal closing date? What is their ideal possession, right? Is earnest money or the timing of earnest money something that's really important to you or to them, right? Asking a lot of questions. Is there already a warranty in place? Right? As many questions as you can, because as beneficial as you can make your offer to the seller while still being in the best interest of your buyer, we definitely want to do that. Right? And I skip to the next one, ask questions about what's important. Inquire about activity on the property, such as the number of showings. They may or may not tell you the number of showings, but typically they will tell you whether or not they have received an offer and what the time frame or requirement is for when they need to receive any additional offers. Any comments on that? Okay. Oh, we have someone who would rather comment chat. Okay. So let's go and look at some things that are in the chat. Melody, I'm new to this market. It'd be great to have a checklist as to what to include in DocuSign offer, including attachments. Great, I can help with that. And then from 2, with COVID and houses going as quick as they are, how have showings changed? Okay, so let's start, Melody, with your question. So in terms of what needs to go with your offer, right? The only items that I would typically send to the listing agent with the offer is I'm going to go ahead and send the pre-approval letter, the residential purchase contract, and then if I'm really thorough, I'm also going to include the agency disclosure and the residential property disclosure signed by my client. We're also going to talk about buyer letters. And I can, we all have our own opinion on buyer letters, but they are very prevalent in the market, and I can share that with you. And 2, maybe if you feel comfortable unmuting, tell me a little bit about your question with regards to showings. What do you mean?
Sorry, couldn't find my mute button. So it seems that with COVID, there are limited times to see the home, right? With the distances and everything. So, and houses going as quick as they are, how do you fit all the time to, get everybody to see the house in order to find the right offer? Does that make sense?
Sure. So do you mean getting your clients in at all, or do you mean your clients are also wanting to take other people in with them?
Just getting in general.
Okay.
So I just had one experience, I think a few weeks ago, when, all the times were blocked off to see a house.
I see.
And it was really difficult for my buyer to go in and see it just because
Okay.
of, social distancing and whatnot.
Yeah, now we're going to compound that even more by reducing the number of daylight hours in which we can go, right? Because it's dark by the time most people get off of work from a traditional schedule. So a couple of things that you're going to see with showings right now is, number 1, and the most common thing you're going to see is no overlapping showings, right? So we're not allowed in previous years, or even just pre-COVID this year, you might be in a home at the same time as another buyer's agent is also showing that home. And currently we're not really seeing that almost at all. So no overlapping showings. What we're also seeing is very short showing windows. So the most common amount of time that we used to have to go and view a home with a buyer was 1 hour. Currently I'm seeing showing windows as small as 15 minutes, right? And it can be very challenging for a buyer if they're not prepared to walk in and see enough of a home in 15 minutes and know if that's where they want to live for the next 10 years, right? It'd be hard for me. So, those are things that are a very unique challenge to the combination of times that we're in between inventory, COVID, and loss of daylight savings time. What I will say is that homes in this time of year tend to have fewer showings. So if you have a serious buyer, there are fewer listings, but the listings that are out there have fewer showings. And the people who are seeing homes right now are typically more serious, have a more immediate need, maybe, than buyers who might go out and look at homes on a nice Sunday in April, right? This is where buyer education is extremely important, to say, based on, and if you guys don't know how to pull these reports, talk to your team leader, talk to your productivity coach, or you can reach out to me to look at the area where your buyer is interested and get a feel for days on market and get a feel for whether or not things are closing above asking price, and prepare them accordingly and let them know, hey guys, here's the thing. The days of us being able to go through a list of properties sometime between Tuesday and Thursday for you to prepare and go see 4 or 5 homes on Saturday. We're just not able to do it that way right now. So do you have flexibility to where if something comes on the market today, that we could go see it before 6 p.m., for example? And if they say, no, okay, that's no problem. I understand that you need to move at your own pace, and it's my responsibility to let you know that if the exact perfect home that you are looking for comes on the market on a weekday at 3 o'clock, that we should be prepared to go see it as quickly as possible. And we should be probably considerate of the fact that we may have to go see it after dark. And then, hopefully do a follow-up if our offer is accepted, and make sure that we do the inspection during the day. It's just a really funky time right now. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, Tabitha. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the unique fun of Zoom. I do always give everybody just a minute to get off of mute and talk when we can hear them talk and all that good stuff. So thanks for being patient with me too in our tech. Right. Let's see. So I wanted to show you, and I'll stop sharing, and I'll share something different. Just a quick document that I kind of developed for working with buyers. It's the most simple thing in the world, but guys, it has helped me so incredibly much. I give my buyers 2 or 3 copies of this paper at the buyer consultation, or if you don't do a formal buyer consultation, I give this to them along with a blank copy of the purchase contract as soon as I feel them starting to get serious, and always at least a few days before I anticipate them making their first offer. I want them to see that when they say make an offer, what they really mean is write a contract to purchase a home that may be accepted in its exact entirety, and now they are committed, right? And I put this right on top. So at the top, I just made a little disclosure, making an offer on a home is an exciting process. Here are the items we'll want to include in our terms to make sure you ask for exactly what you want. We will discuss these items before making any offer on your behalf and include them in an official residential purchase contract document when you're ready to submit an offer to a seller. So all I did, guys, was just take every line item from the purchase contract and slap it on one piece of paper. The reason I do this is because I think that when you find your exact perfect home, and this is the same script I use with my buyer, guys, when you find your exact perfect home, you're really only going to be focused on 2 things. You're going to be focused on what do I have to pay to get it, and when can we close? And those things are extremely important. And there's a huge list in between of things that we're also going to have to consider. And we need to consider this at the time that we make the offer, right? At the time that we make the offer. Yes, I will send this out at the end of the course. I just have it as a Word document. We want to make sure that they understand the breadth of the decisions that they'll need to make before they make the offer. And a lot of times we're going to be, especially in our inventory environment, it's going to be a really small window of time that they have to think about these things. So I share and I say, please, I know this 13-page contract is just like the most exciting reading you're going to do this month, but please do read it. And then I say, and please consider all of these things, and we're going to talk about each one, right? So, would you like to work with an attorney? Of course, I always remind you, it says right there at the top that you should. And if you'd like to do that, you're more than welcome. And if you need a recommendation, I can share one with you. And then they go, do people do that? And they say, not every client decides to also have an attorney, but I'm obligated to let you know that you can, right? I never, never, never say you don't need one, right? So make sure that's not in your vocabulary. Loan type, this is where you have a conversation with them about the fact that before they go see their perfect home, before they walk through the front door, they should have in hand a loan approval and or a proof of funds, right? Even for a cash offer, guys, you need to have that at the time that the offer is made. And it's probably going to happen on a weekend, so no, you can't wait till you find the house. Special inclusions or exclusions, right? So as we're going through the home, look at and consider if there's something that you're in love with. Ask me if it's attached or included automatically. And if I say no, we need to write that in right away. Seller paid closing costs, guys, that is still a thing, right? Not in every area and not on every house, but it is still prevalent in certain areas and in certain price points. So you need to be prepared for that ahead of time. How much time do they want to allow for the home inspection and the remedy? Do they want the seller to provide a home warranty, or will they be purchasing that themselves? And guys, notice I didn't say, do you want one? I said, do you want to ask the seller to provide one, or will you be purchasing that yourself? I strongly recommend warranties to every single client. And then if they decide not to, that's fine, but I'm always recommending. How much earnest money and what will be the timing of that? What would be your ideal closing date, your final walkthrough, possession, and duration of offer? Right.
What are you referencing in negotiate remedy?
So let's look. I'm going to stop sharing and pick up a different document here. Do you see the residential purchase contract on your screens?
Yes.
Perfect. So on the purchase contract let's get down there. In section 6, inspections and tests, right? What we're going to do is we're going to identify two very specific periods of time. We're going to identify the first period of time, which is here in 6.3, specified inspection period. Number of days that we have to conduct as many inspections and tests as our buyers care to do, right? That includes, but is not limited to, and I love that they added this section to the contract, A through I. If they would like to test the quality of the water, if they would like to test for radon, if they would like to put a scope through the sewer lines, if they would like to have a structural engineer look at the foundation, all of those things need to happen within that specified number of days, right? And that's that first period of time, that's inspection period.
Okay, so that's all related to inspections then?
That's all related to inspections, and that's the first period of time. What I like to do, so the most common number of days there is 10. In a competitive offer situation, I do see people shrink down that time to try to consolidate it. And what I typically will recommend for my folks is that, for example, if we have a 10-day total period of time, I try to get the home inspection, or what I call the sort of basic inspection, done in the first half of that period of time. So if we have 10 days, I'm going to try to get the home inspection done in day 1 through 5. The reason for that is because the standard home inspection is not always the last thing that needs to be done, right? Most common is a traditional home inspection and a radon inspection. The radon would need to be placed in that first 5 days during the home inspection, and it could take up to 2 additional days after that for them to take all the readings and then come pick it up and send you the report. But sometimes that first home inspection that I get back on day 5 or 6 will recommend additional secondary inspections, right? So for example, a lot of these other things that are listed here So waste treatment, that refers to septic systems and aeration systems out in the country. Mold testing, having a structural engineer come in and look at basement walls, or having a roofing company come and look at the roof. The traditional home inspector is not going to give really specific recommendations on those detailed items. Instead, what they're going to say is recommend evaluation by XYZ professional, right? And that's why I want to have the traditional home inspection done by day 5, so that if they have those additional things that they recommend, then I have another 5 days to get those extra things done, and I don't have to ask for an extension on my inspection period. Any questions on that? Right. And then Melody, to answer your question, then we're going to go down to 6.4 of the contract. And that says if the buyer's not in good faith satisfied, right, then they're going to ask for remedies and repairs. And this is a second period of time that follows after the inspection period. Because there's been some, I've had some back and forth with people who said, like, well, what if I send my inspection early? Does that trigger the 5 days? No, it doesn't. It just gives them more time to do the remedy. Does that make sense? So it's 10 plus 5 for a total of 15. They need to do every single test they want, and they need to make their whole list of unsatisfactory conditions by the end of day 10, or whatever you put in 6 point, I don't have all the numbers memorized, 6.3. And then you have whatever number of days here to come to an agreement. So when you send the buyer's request to remedy, that has to happen by day 10. And the most common number we see here is 5. So then you guys have 5 days of back and forth to come to a full agreement, right? So a lot of times this is another period of negotiation where, you know, the buyers will ask for a list of 20 items, right? You would send that, the list along with a copy of the inspection or the specific inspection pages associated with the numbers that you sent, right? And then your seller and your listing agent have 5 days. Everybody has 5 days to figure out what they're going to agree to, right? Sometimes that's one response. Sometimes it goes back and forth multiple times. Sometimes sellers need to have their own inspections, which can happen. But that second number, that second line item, Melody, is for the remedy negotiation period. Right. And guys, when I talk about these line items and when I talk about this process, I'm referring to offers that are written on Columbus Realtors contracts. If you are doing something out of the area and you write a contract and they counter offer with a different area's contract, especially the ones in the neighboring boards, they treat this process differently in different areas, right? My strongest recommendation is, as a buyer's agent, that you use this contract every time. And then if they counter offer with a different contract, that you immediately contact your broker so that you guys can go through that and understand how that differs, right? If you're doing business in or near Columbus and Central Ohio, that's, you know, they're going to use this contract or something very similar. If you're going up into like Mansfield area or out to Springfield area or down sort of south of Circleville, that's when you might start seeing different documents.
Tabitha,
Yes.
have you ever said to the other agent that basically it's our broker's, I don't know how you want to say it, whatever rule or whatever, that all offers should be on the contract that we use?
Mm-hmm.
That we could send them that contract for their review.
Absolutely. And so on the one hand, you have a duty to your buyer to represent them in the way that gets them their end goal, right? Which is to get them the house. And if the listing agent says, I want all offers on this paper, then you need to figure that out. And I think that the majority of our audience here is from either Keller Williams Excel or Keller Williams Capital Partners. Both of the brokers at both of those locations have said very clearly, we teach, we understand the 2020 Columbus Realtors Residential Purchase Contract with Receipt. And that's the one that we want you to use. So from an instructor standpoint, what I'll say is you should be writing all your offers on this. If you get an offer on your listing that's on different paper, or if they counter you that's on different paper, that you immediately contact your broker to work closely with them to make sure that you and your clients understand exactly how to interpret that contract in a way that you can still get your client the house. That's the only thing I want to be careful of is that, and I'm sure that both Joanne and Lori would agree, that we would never want that to be a reason your client didn't get the house, right? So if the other agent's adamant, then just work with them to make sure that everybody understands.
Okay, thank you.
This one for sure. So while we are in the contract, I wanted to talk with you about some common variations that are happening with buyer's offers right now that are sort of outside of traditional norm. One thing that's happening is that we are seeing a large number of contracts that have inspection, but no remedy, right? So the intention of that is, and if I come back up here, the way that you would write that is that you would have an inspection number here. Then you would have either a 0 or an NA on this line item of 6.4. And my additional recommendation from a compliance standpoint and a protection standpoint for a buyer is that you add some additional basic language in the additional terms and conditions, right? And that you would say, this is an as-is contract. Buyers will perform all inspections in agreed upon period. Okay. Reserve all rights in 6.4B, but agree not to ask for any remedies or repairs. The reason, and if you wrote that down, that's great. If you're, check with your broker to see if they already have that language in writing for you to use. If not, if you're gonna ever add any language, just write it in plain English, right? We're not attorneys, write it in plain English and refer to the attorney language that's already there, right? Don't rewrite stuff that's already there, right? Reserve all rights in 6.4B. 6.4B is notice of termination, which means if there's a non-negotiable in the inspections, something that they just cannot live with, as the roof is going to need replaced tomorrow. The foundation needs $20,000 worth of work, right? That they can then terminate their contract, right? If there's a non-negotiable, there's mold in all the HVAC system, whatever it might be. But they're not going to send a list of remedies and repairs. And what that does for the seller is that means that after that first 7 or 10 days, they're good. They're not going to have to worry about that second round of negotiations, right? That's one. The other thing that we are seeing is we are seeing buyers offering to pay extra for a house, right? So they are going to pay extra in 2 ways. Way number 1 is that they can offer to pay extra through an escalation clause. And rather than writing your own escalation clause, you should use the Columbus Realtors Escalation Addendum document that's provided to you that's already in your templates, whether that's .loop or DocuSign, that's already available to you. Use that one, don't write your own. The other way that people are offering to pay extra is that they are doing something called an appraisal gap. Right? Have any of you ever written an offer that included any appraisal gap language? Barb, where did you get that language? She's working on unmute. There she is. There she is.
Sorry, I probably got it through either the forms or information from one of my classes. I would not have winged it.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Appraisal gap language is very straightforward. Check to see if your broker already has one written for you. It just says, in the event that the property appraises for less than the agreed upon price, buyer will pay X amount more than the appraised value, not to exceed the contract price. Right? So let's say you're going to pay it, the house is listed for 190. You end up in contract for 200 and it appraises for 195. Right? What that means is that depending on what your appraisal gap is, you'd have to pay that much more than 195, right? But not more than 200. Does that make sense? In the event that you make this available to your clients, first of all, if you have home buyers and they are in a high demand area, you need to make them aware that this is happening. It is absolutely not your responsibility to advise them to do it. It is not your responsibility to tell your clients to do anything. It is your responsibility to give them all the information, provide them with all the expected outcomes, and inform them so that they can make an educated decision on how they want to move forward, essentially based on how bad do they want it and how much money do they have. Right? That's the world that home buyers are kind of living in today, guys. How bad do they want it and how much money do they have? If they have any questions about what that means for their loan, if they have any questions about what that means about their cash position, I a lot of times will direct them back to their lender or their banker who has that information about them. I tend to try not to give any financial advice because I'm not the lender, I'm not the banker. I'm just letting them know what's happening, right?
Tabitha,
Mhm.
do you this one deal that I just closed? I had the seller and we got the offer, and I talked to the agent about, I wasn't sure because they offered us more than what we asked for. And I said, I am not sure it'll appraise at that figure, but I'm going to do my homework more and see how well I can get it too. But is it okay that I call their lender and see if in fact that if it all works out on both sides, that they can afford to do that appraisal gap?
Yeah.
It was an FHA. And so she said, go ahead. She gave me permission to call the lender.
Sure.
And the lender said, yes, they can afford it. Absolutely. But I don't know if they will do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, that's fine. I just need to know if they are, financially stable enough to do that.
Yep.
So anyway, it ended up appraising at the higher price that they offered. So we didn't have to worry about it. But
Sure.
But
What's really funny is the ones I thought wouldn't appraise did, and the ones I thought for sure would definitely appraise didn't. And it's just like a weird time right now. So we do have to prepare them for a lot of different eventualities. So if I keep my buyer's agent hat on, right, what I'm going to do, and I've seen a lot of buyer's agents do this lately, which is a great idea, is some of the really great local lenders that we have will make calls on behalf of our buyers to the listing agent. And they will say, I know that they're offering this. I just wanted to let you know that they are a strong buyer. We've collected all their documents. We have their tax returns already and they're good to go. Or, you know, I know that they offered an appraisal gap and I just wanted to assure you that they have plenty of money in the savings account to make that happen, right? And so, especially in multiple offers, right? Having that cover letter, which I'll show you in just a minute, and then also empowering the lender for your buyers to make that call can make a difference for them, right? Because, you know, Barb, you took a minute to reach out to them to check on that, but had you been in a multiple offer situation and you had two identical and one reached out to you and the other one you had to reach out to, that could have made the difference on whether or not those people got the house, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So then, you know, now I take my buyer's agent hat off and I put my listing agent hat on. And that's the fun of this session is we kind of go back and forth, right? As a listing agent, if I don't get that call or if I have a concern, you know, absolutely you can make that call. The lender may or may not answer you. The lender may or may not have that information or have been authorized to give you that information. That doesn't mean you can't ask the question. Just see what they say, right? And these days, a lot of times they will answer you because they know it's in the best interest. And hopefully if that client has a great buyer's agent, they've prepared them for that call, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's the other thing that agents are doing right now in order to really kind of strengthen their clients' offers is that they are doing letters. Let me get to that. So in the material that you have for the class, it states that it makes it seem like it's really like, I don't know, just sort of methodical what to put on a cover letter. It says that you should put the description of the details, like bullet point what the terms are. I'm going to disagree with that. And what we're seeing in the current marketplace is I do like to let the contract and the offer speak for itself. So I think I'm already sending the details of the terms by sending the contract. So I don't need to then also summarize those terms on a cover letter when it's right there on the next page, right? Does that make sense? The letters that we're seeing and that people are using right now are playing the emotional card, we'll say. It's, you know, we're trying to get the listing agent, or more importantly, we're trying to get the seller to just fall in love with these buyers so that it helps to strengthen their offer, right? So we make the contract as strong as we can with terms. We make the letter as strong as we can by adding the emotional component. And sellers are people just like buyers are people. And they, you know, sometimes they do have an emotional attachment to their home and they do want to know that, you know, these people are going to love the roses as much as I loved the roses, or that their kids will play on the swing set like my kids played on the swing set, or that their dog will love the doghouse, whatever it is, right?
Tabitha,
Mm-hmm.
I was just as a heads up at a recent contract class with Lori Malner. She is prohibiting us from having buyer letters just because of the fair housing risk that poses, like familial status and things like that. So I don't know. I'm just saying that
Okay,
Lori
and-
had just brought that up just in
No,
the
good.
last month.
Thank you. I didn't know that. And so that is in terms of both representation of buyers and of sellers?
That's my understanding. She just
Got it.
feels like it's sort of a big red flag because you don't know what they're going to say that could be violating fair housing,
I see.
and disclosing things about themselves, like we have kids and, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's just too much of a risk right now.
Okay.
Is her thoughts.
Okay. And so, you know, if that is the case for everybody at Capital Partners, please don't use letters there, right? And it is the stance of NAR that letters do run the risk of creating potential fair housing violations, or the the concern, like even if that's not the reason, it can create a possibility of someone thinking it's the reason, which could create risk for you and or your clients, which I'm sure is the reason for Lori's policy. We don't have that policy at Excel, but I completely can see why you would have that policy at Capital Partners. What I can tell you is, as a buyer's agent, if people want to write one, I will let them, right? But if your policy is that you don't allow that, then you need to share that with your client. As a listing agent, I have actively advised my clients that we put a policy in the A to A remarks that buyer letters will not be considered. And, please don't send them.
Good idea.
Because the protection is really going to come into place, and the need for protection against fair housing, or the perception of fair housing violations, is really going to come into play for the sellers, right? Because they're the ones making the decision. And we would never want it to, first of all, we never want them to violate. And we would never want anyone to think that they violated because they chose an offer based on any protected class scenario. We want them to choose the best offer based on the combination of terms, right? Not based on any other factors. And so when I'm the listing agent, I do put a note in A to A remarks, because I don't want people to put a lot of time into something that we're not going to use anyway. And it says, sellers will not consider any buyer personal letters, right? Please strengthen your offer with terms, right? And so I can completely understand and agree with that. And I do explain that to the sellers of, hey guys, there might be some that come with these. This is my recommendation to you. However, it's 100% your decision, but let me explain to you why we should exclude those. And they go, absolutely. Yes. Okay, good.
Tabitha, let's just say you are the buyer's agent.
Okay.
And as a listing agent, you put in the verbiage, agent to agent, no buyer's letters. Thank you very much. Is it okay if your buyers tells you, could you please just tell them this?
Mm-hmm.
It's not in writing, it's verbiage.
Sure. I mean, yeah, absolutely. But I think what they need to understand and what you need to share with them is, I don't have a direct line to the sellers, but if you'd like me to put a note in my email to the listing agent,
Right.
I'm happy to do that. Yet I can't guarantee that that makes its way from the listing agent to the sellers. But if you ask me to do something, as long as it's not a violation of any ethics and rules and blah, 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 then sure, no problem. Right. And that might be something as simple as, wow, we love the decorating. Sure, absolutely. And a little compliment can go a long way, but we can't, I don't recommend going against anything that's put in the A to A remarks. Yeah. And you could just put it on an email. So that's going to be the next thing that we talk about, is actually presenting the offer. And I'm going to kind of skip back up here to the checklist, right? All the clauses, contingencies, create an opportunity. We're not going to do that today. Offer rating guidelines, right? And here it talks about why you should use a letter. All the same reasons it recommends that buyers write a letter are the same reasons I recommend sellers not review them. So do with that what you will. That's within your company policies. Talking about some objection handlers, right? And now let's talk about presenting the offer. What I've always done is, that's for the seller. Oh, don't worry about that here. I don't want to make you dizzy while I scroll up and down. When I am ready to present an offer and I have it all written up, I have already talked to the listing agent once and said, and I choose my words carefully, my buyers are considering making an offer. Can you share with me what your ideal terms are for the seller? That's when I'm asking those questions that are specifically related to the property. What is their ideal closing date? Do they need extra possession? Is that something that they would feel comfortable doing an appropriate rent back for, right? Is there anything they would prefer to leave behind? Is there anything that they have designated that they definitely want to take? All of those things. I've already had that conversation. Then I wrote the offer with my clients. Now I've got it all packaged up and it's ready to go. And then I'm going to call the listing agent again and I'm going to say, great news. I'm going to be sending you an offer. I've gone ahead and included everything I can possibly think of to make it very easy for your clients. We really put our best foot forward. How would you like me to send it? So we have a habit of happy sharing in Dotloop sometimes for those of us that use Dotloop, and not everyone appreciates that. And as a listing agent who's received multiple offers, I don't appreciate having 17 loops with the same name. So I always make that call and ask them how would they like it to be packaged, how would they like to receive it. And then I package it up exactly how they ask for it and send it that way. And I do always ask for them to confirm receipt, right? If possible, they will confirm receipt by having their clients sign the actual receipt of offer at the bottom of page 13. I'll show you that. All right, close your eyes and we'll scroll fast. This always drives me crazy when people do this. Here we go, receipt of offer. Ideally, you would receive that back as evidence of your offer having been presented. However, I will prepare you that not all listing agents do that, even the great ones. And not all buyer's agents are using this version of the most up-to-date contract. Of course we do, right? But not everyone does. So that's there. I just basically am asking them to say, yes, I got your offer, thank you. And I'm asking them, when should we expect to hear back, right? Notice all along this, I haven't talked at all about texting people for terms. If the listing agent asks, or sort of you call them and they respond with the text, and then you call them and they respond with the text, that's fine. But those are just conversations. So never, ever, ever assume that that is any type of thing that you can communicate back to your client. Does that make sense? Right? No negotiating by text. No, if he says like, I got it, right? Listing agent says, got your offer. Okay, that's fine. But, hey, will you be sending receipts? Right? You can just ask that, right? Then we wait, right? You might get a counter offer. You might have your offer accepted. You might not get anything back, right? In which case, at least hopefully you get an email or a text message saying thank you, but we've gone with another offer. Or you could get a counter offer to go into backup position, right? Any of those, right? As a listing agent, when I get offers, I always will call obviously the winning offer first, then we'll package up any others and offer backup position, or I'll just call them and say, hey, would your people like to be in backup? If they say yes, then I write it up, right? And then I call everybody else, or if there's a ton of them, I might email or text through showing time and let them know that we've accepted another offer and we wish them the best of luck and hope to work with them in the future. Right. So contract to close is a different session, but before we put our listing hat on as it relates to offers, do you guys have any questions that are related to making offers on behalf of buyers? If you yourself have not yet read and understand the contract and or have gone to at least, I'm going to say 2 contract classes or CEs or meet the brokers or things like that, that really go through this document in depth. We don't have time to do that today. That's, contracts is really kind of its own class. But I highly, highly recommend it. There are some things in here that you're going to want to talk with your folks about that don't have anything to do with the line items on the checklist, but that are still very important, and that you want to have full and complete understanding of. Right. Going once, going twice on buyers writing offers. No question is too detailed. All right. So then if we then put our seller hat on, right, then we are going to present offers that we receive on the part of our seller, right? So if we think back to what we had planned for as buyer's agents, we want to really consider how much information and talk with our seller so that when we get those calls from buyer's agents and they say, what are your ideal terms? When do they want to close by? What about this? What about that? We've already had all those conversations with our sellers, and they have advised us on how much and what to share with those buyer's agents. And you really want to make sure that you're sharing the same level of information and the same detailed information with anybody that asks. Depending on how in demand the listing is that you have, you may even choose to prepare something and just send it to everybody who shows the house. As if you have a listing that you're going to get, 50 showings and 12 offers, it can get a little cumbersome to answer each one of those phone calls, have those conversations, listen to why they think their person is the best person, etc. So you can even go ahead, and I have even put that in the agent to agent remarks, right? Showings to occur from, so what something like that might say is showing scheduled through CSS from Saturday at 9 a.m., Saturday and Sunday between 9 and 6, right? Offers must be received by Sunday at 7. Seller to respond by Monday at 5. Right? And then once you enter into that period and you already have your showings, you can then change the 8A remarks. And it would say, and now of course, all of this is with your seller's permission. It could say offer, any offer ideal terms will include close date of, possession date of, right? And you can get that detailed in those messages, or you can use showing time to send broadcast messages that have that information. And that's a great way to make sure everybody gets the same info at the same time and has the same opportunities. Okay. So if you get questions from buyer's agents that are outside of the information that your seller has empowered you to share, then it's a really easy answer. You know what, that's not something that they've empowered me to share ahead of time, but if it's important to you, you can write it up and I'll present it, right?
Tabitha,
Mm-hmm.
I just had a quick question. I missed it. When you were talking about sharing some of the things the seller would like to see in the contract, did you say that that would go into the agent to agent remarks?
Once you are actively in showings, then that's something you could do in the agent to agent remarks.
Okay.
Certainly I have seen where once a deadline for an offer has been set, I will see that added to agent remarks. If you wanted to have those things prepared ahead of time, but you need, agent to agent remarks is a pretty small field. There's not a lot of room to put a lot of stuff in there.
Right.
And you don't want it to get cut off. So
Okay.
if you need that space for other things, then you can do a showing time broadcast.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. And that is the last comment I made, which is write it up and I'll present it, is kind of my favorite response as a listing agent for just about anything a buyer's agent wants to know that's outside of the set parameters that the sellers asked me to share, right? Would they consider blah, blah, blah? You know what? That's not something that they've empowered me to talk about yet. Write it up and I'll present it, right? Well, I know you said that you're, not taking offers till Sunday, but if we had this and we had that, you know what? I'm duty bound to my sellers to present all offers, write it up and I'll present it, right? Because it's not my decision. And if you're dealing with a listing agent and they say, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, a little bit of a red flag for me from a compliance standpoint, because you don't decide, they decide, right? Your buyers decide, your seller decides everything. They decide how much info you should share and when, and they decide what offers to consider and when, right? It's your job to present everything that you get.
Tabitha,
Yes.
what I did on one of my listings this year is it was, you leave a certain amount of time for them to bring in their offers, a due date time. And but my seller says, well, what if we get a fabulous offer quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to wait until that due date time? And so I put in the verbiage of agent to agent that my seller reserves the right to, let's just say, choose a particular offer at any time during that period.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line is, get your offer in sooner than later.
Don't wait, right? Absolutely. And that's a very good idea. And Barb, that does happen. So, what we've seen is that you do want to be a little careful with the A to A language. That's not contractual language. But bottom line is, whether your seller asks you for permission to do that or not, they are well within their rights to accept any offer at any time. They can take their house off the market if they want to. They can sell it to their grandma if they want to, right? They have to honor their contracts. And a listing agreement is not a contract. And A to A remarks certainly are not a contract. So that's a very good point, is to say, offers will be, expect to be accepted as late as. However, seller reserves the right to accept any offer at any time. That is the case anyway. But you having said that is really just kind of saving you the headache of, as a listing agent, of getting some really upset buyer's agent calls. Because I think there is a misconception, and I'm glad that you brought that up. There's a misconception on behalf of buyer's agents that if it says, showings Saturday and Sunday 9 to 6, all offers must be in by Sunday at 6 and left open till Monday at 5, that they think they can take until Sunday at 5:45. And that's not necessarily the case, right? So make sure that your clients know that, make sure that your seller knows that. And it's a little bit of the Wild Wild West right now. You might go see it on Saturday morning, make an offer Saturday morning that's only good till 5 p.m. Right? And obviously we can't talk about every scenario here, but this is one that can and actually does happen. Buyer is really excited about it. I've done this. Go to see the house on Saturday at 9 a.m. We know this is going to be our house. So we actually wrote the offer last night. We just haven't signed it yet, right? We're going in. We're the first ones in on Saturday at 9 a.m. We submit our offer at 9:45 and it expires at 4. But we made it amazing, right? So now that seller and that listing agent are going to work together and they're going to decide, great, would we like to go ahead and accept that offer? And if so, we absolutely can. Or do we want to kind of hold tight to our time frame? The seller's risk to holding tight to their time frame is that that buyer might disappear, right? And maybe that was the best offer they were going to get. And that's still their choice how they want it. Right? So as a buyer's agent, I could try that. And then if they won't answer it by then, I can just amend my offer and submit another one that gives them the time that they need. Or I can go take my folks to look at something else.
Yeah, that's the risk.
Yep.
Mhm.
And
Not to
let's
get
be
too
honest,
greedy.
like sellers are pretty smart these days, and so are listing agents. They know that if you love it until 4 o'clock on Saturday, you're still gonna love it on Sunday. And you'll probably rewrite and give them the time they want, and you may get the house and you may not. It's just kind of the nature of how things are working right now. It's very, very competitive. But it's worth a shot, right? And they are within their rights to accept that. And you're very smart to answer them in that way, to say, guys, you can accept any offer at any time. It just has to be in writing, right?
Right.
And ideally it would be on the Columbus contract, but in writing is in writing. And that's another thing, guys, and this is why, Barb, I hesitated to have you respond to somebody and say our broker requires that we accept offers only on this document. You are duty bound as a listing agent to present all offers. And an offer is a combination of terms and conditions in writing. You could receive a combination of terms and conditions in writing on a napkin in crayon handed to you at a bar. You need to present that to your seller, right? Now, that doesn't happen very often. I'm just letting you know. But you could get an offer on a different board's document. I've gotten that. You could get an offer that's handwritten and hard to read and frustrating. You need to present that. But you can always do like a clarifying addendum, or you could rewrite the contract and get them to sign it, and you can figure it out later.
Sounds good.
Mhm. So, I do have, and I saw that somebody asked for it earlier, and I'll share both of these with you guys. It's almost the exact same document as the buyer offer checklist. This one just has a little bit different language at the top. It's called a purchase offer summary. It says, congratulations, you've received an offer for the purchase of your home. Below is a summary of the details. Please be sure to review the purchase contract in full. This document is simply to streamline the document and provide you with all details in a single page. This is not a contract. I put this as a cover page on top of an offer before I have the conversation with my sellers. What this allows me to do is a couple things. It allows me to better understand the offer very like holistically, right? It makes sure for me that I didn't miss anything, because when we look at the contract as a blank, or when we look at the contract like in Dotloop, the fields that get filled in are like highlighted, and they're like, they really stand out. But some of the offers that you'll receive don't look like that. Depending on the format that they are written in, they might just look like a paragraph and you could miss something, right? So this is making sure that I don't miss anything. And I do this for each offer. If I had, let's say, more than 3 offers, I might choose to put this into a spreadsheet, into a side-by-side spreadsheet format. But if I have 3 or fewer, then I like this because I can see everything and it's very clear. There's a couple of things that are very obviously missing from this, because I don't want to draw my seller's attention to it, right? So there's no picture of the buyers. There's no fancy emotional letter. I don't even have the buyer's name on this, right? So what I've done a lot of times is I'll put a note up at the top and it'll say like offer received at blank day, blank time, right? Or I'll give them numbers like this is offer number 1, offer number 2, offer number 3 in order as they come in so I can organize it. But I don't want them to have any consideration other than terms and conditions. And that's again, like protecting them from any kind of perception of discrimination, right? So this allows them to kind of see everything all at once. And then if there's a financial consideration, what I may even do, or if they're a seller who likes lots and lots of information, is I may actually go ahead and do a variation of a seller net proceeds sheet for each offer, so that they can really understand. Because once you start getting, well, this one has a warranty, but this one has a higher price, but this one has a remedy and this one doesn't, and it gets very confusing. And sometimes that can kind of bring some extra things to light and help them understand better the net result of what they're looking at. And then they decide, do we want to accept any one of these in its entirety? Is there anything that we need to do to counteroffer? Or do we need to go back to the drawing board and do what we call highest and best? We are seeing less and less highest and best. The reason for that is because I think people are really putting their best foot forward from the beginning, right? Even in a multiple offer situation, there's usually one that's great. And I'm not a fan of kind of eking out the last 25 cents out of a deal. I'm a really big fan of the really excited person who really put their best foot forward and letting them stay excited, not trying to get an extra $1,000 out of them. Does that make sense? That has served, allowing the most excited person who puts their best foot forward and accepting their offer as it stands, has served us very well as far as like my seller clients. Because a lot of times the first person who comes in, who loves it the most, who offers first and puts their best foot forward, is more motivated to continue through the process, through inspections and negotiations and lender costs and appraisals, than the person who kind of came in last and offered, you know, $500 more on the escalation clause, but then feels like they're overpaying for the house. Does that make sense? So make sure that you present everything. And that's why I added the section at the bottom. This is other important details or contingencies. So I might make a note and I might say, you know, the representative for this buyer called me when it first came on the market and they wanted to be first in the house. And they complimented this or that, you know, of your decorating, anything that's not related to, again, any protected class, so that we can consider all terms, right? I have in the past had sellers take a slightly lower offer price-wise because it was a better combination of terms and conditions, right? So make sure they're considering everything and make sure that you get their buy-in as a seller on every single line item. And so if it's a great price and it's great everything else, but they were hoping for 7 days possession and this only gives them 2, they can still choose to accept it, or you can counter on just the possession, right? But make sure they know that, guys, once we accept this, we accept all pieces and parts of it, and we can't guarantee that they'll agree to any changes after the fact. So we need to do all of those now. What questions do you have as it relates to presenting offers to a seller? Oh,
Tabitha,
oh,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to say this was a ton of great information, really, really helpful. Probably one of the best Ignite classes I've been to so far. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. I know that it was a lot of me talking, so I don't like not having a lot of the stuff in writing for you, but I definitely am happy to share the document. Misty, Tabitha is the best. Thank you, Misty. I'll be happy to share the documents if you'd like those. Make sure that you put your email in the chat, and I'll scroll up and I'll snag all those emails out of there, and just put everybody on an email with those extra docs that I have. And they're just super simple. They're Word documents, guys. It's just the line items and then a line. But if it's helpful, I'm happy to share. I think, you know, sort of if I can get on my soapbox for a second, I think as agents, and I get calls about this all the time where people go, well, we got an offer on this, or we got this offer, or we're making this offer, like, what should I do? And I start to get the impression sometimes that realtors think that it's our job to tell our clients what to do, or to advise. If we're being careful, we say, I should advise them, I'm their advisor. And I go, but you're not. Does that make sense? You are a consultant. You should inform them. You should provide them with every piece of information that they need to make an amazing decision on their own behalf, but you should not be any part of that decision. Does that make sense? Right? And that goes for the buyer, that goes for the seller, that goes for pricing the listing, that goes for what do you want to offer, all of those things. So the times that I have known of people to have complaints brought against them, or even if it didn't quite get to an official complaint, but they just had a client that was unhappy. A lot of times if we backtrack it, where it comes to is that the client felt like they were told or guided to do something that they now see or now believe was not the right thing, or that they think that their client is telling them something that doesn't benefit them, but instead benefits the other party. That makes sense? So if you stay in a place and in a mindset of, I'm, a consultant, I'm an educator, and I say, like, ad nauseum, I say it's my job as your agent. I see my job as to give you every single piece of information, to know everything about what's going on in the current market and in this neighborhood. And I'm going to do that by doing extensive research, by talking to other realtors and understanding what the other offers may look like. I can't guarantee they'll answer me, but I guarantee I'm going to ask the questions and bring you all that information so that you can put together the best possible offer for you that's as strong as it can be while still having the protections in it that you feel like you want and need, right? And it's their offer, right? And if my seller accepts an offer, they've accepted the offer. And we do have, if we're really good at our job and we have a great relationship with our clients, they try to get us to make it ours. They go, well, what would you do? What should I do? Just tell me what to do. And I go, gosh, I'll tell you what, as soon as I'm selling my house, I'll tell you what I do. And right now, let me get you all, should we go back over your options again? Okay. Option number 1, you can do this and the likely outcome will be X. Option number 2, you could do this and the likely outcome will be Y. Option number 3 is also this. Which one of those do you like? Or do you dislike the least? Okay, it sounds like you've made your decision, right? And now it's my job to write it up and try to go get that for you. Right? And now they feel really, really great about it. Or if it ends up not kind of working out, they go, oh, you said this would happen and it did. And I go, I know, it's almost like I've done this before. It's crazy.
Tabitha, have you ever lost a client?
Have I ever lost a client? Oh, sure. Sure.
I don't understand why anybody would want to leave you.
Oh, I'll tell you, I'm not a good I'm not a good buyer representative or listing representative for somebody who is a like super negotiator and they're like, I don't know, I think we can get another $500 out of them. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe you can, but gosh, they really sure do love it right now. And I don't know that it's gonna appraise, right? So I am kind of a little bit of a, I do play the middle just a little bit. And I'm not a good fit for sometimes for investors because of that, right? But that's okay. There's 8,000 realtors and, millions of people that own and rent homes. And so there's somebody for everybody.
Thank God.
You're so nice though. I love talking to you guys. You're so complimentary. Yeah, I just, it's hard because they want you to tell them what to do. And I dealt with that too. I used to work in financial advisory stuff, and then it was even harder, to explain to somebody a portfolio of mutual funds and then make them make their own decision. And they go, I don't know, just put my money somewhere good. No, that's not how it works. So it keeps me out of trouble. I'll tell you that. Right. What else? What other questions do you guys have about making offers or receiving offers or kind of what's going on out in the market right now? Last thing I'll tell you, which is just kind of a little hint about what's going on, and I've heard of this in multiple arenas, and I think you alluded to it, Barb, actually, is when you represent a seller, is getting offers with like crazy high prices with appraisal gaps, right? I think that you really need to explain to your sellers what those offers are actually, what those offers could actually end up meaning. And making sure that they don't get married to that like super high number. So, you might have a listing that's, to go back to my example, it's listed for 189. And you do the CMA and you go, you know what, like the appraised value is probably going to be in that neighborhood of that like 189, maybe as high as 195. And you get an offer for $225,000 and an appraisal gap of 5,000. And your seller goes, woohoo, $225,000. You go, hold on. I need to inform you that it's very unlikely that we're going to actually close for $225,000. Now, stranger things have happened, and that's best case scenario. But I'd like to share with you a more likely scenario. Make sure you're still happy with that. Our CMA still tells us the same thing that it did when we listed, which is that 190 is an appropriate price. So a likely appraisal amount will be somewhere between 185 and 225. And we'll get 5,000 more than that. To me, that's a win. Is that a win to you? Okay, so let's just remember that, and we're just going to kind of hang tight and see how the appraisal comes out. Right. Appraisal gaps are very common, and those are the thing that I think is winning a lot of people houses. But make sure if you're going to write that your client very thoroughly understands what that means and what they're committing to, and make sure that they know that if there's more of a gap than what they're covering, that the seller does not automatically have to take that number, right? They have to agree, okay? What else? A lot of people are waiving remedy period. Some are also waiving inspection. Guys, I cannot in good conscience, I have never in good conscience suggested to a buyer to waive inspection, even if they are themselves a home inspector and they went through the house with a fine-tooth comb, or they know what they're looking at, or they're a contractor, because there's just so many things that we don't get to do in a showing that are conducted at an inspection. So you don't get to turn the water on and see how hot it gets. You don't get to see if the tub's drain. You don't get to see if all the toilets flush without flooding the bathroom. You don't get in the attic. You don't get on the roof. Things that a home inspection is meant to do, right? If you have buyers that are adamant that they want to waive the home inspection, then again, according to agency, you have to go get them what they want. And I think that you should have a hold harmless document signed by them saying, I understand that it's my rights as a buyer and according to the contract that I've been advised to get a home inspection. And I understand that I'm waiving that and choosing to move forward without one. Right. What else? Lots of people are doing post-close possession. I've seen anywhere from, and successfully negotiated anywhere from 7 days for free to I've negotiated 59 days post-close possession. And everybody agreed, it worked out great. Just make sure that you have a great understanding and your clients understand it and that you have the right documents to go along with that.
Tabitha,
Mhm.
one thing, I'm married to an insurance man,
Got it.
and my father was an insurance man. Our whole family is insurance. Okay.
Mhm.
Bottom line is, he said, always ask if they're going to stay in the house after closing,
Mhm.
that the other side tells their insurance agent to extend the time frame as
Mhm.
far as them being insured if there was something that happened. And it's just another layer of protection. The seller has insurance, you know. I mean, the buyer has the insurance as far as home insurance, but still,
Yeah.
the seller needs to extend their insurance.
The seller needs to extend, and in fact, they actually need to purchase different insurance, which I know you would probably go into detail if we have time, but yeah, the amount of time the seller is still in the home is covered, but none of the seller's stuff is at all.
Oh, right.
So make sure that everybody understands that and that
Like renter's insurance.
professionals to tell them exactly what that needs to look like. Yep. And there's a great new post-close possession agreement that explains who's responsible for what that you should use if you're going to go more than a couple days.
Where is that? Where do you get that?
It's in Columbus Realtors templates. It's called, I don't know. Let me go look for it. Who else has questions? Oh, you're supposed to help me buy some time while I find the document. Okay, there. Seller occupancy after closing addendum is what it's called. Let me see, I can share that with you. Did I find it? Nope. It looks like this. Seller occupancy after closing. So typically what I would do is I would write up the contract, and then if we got into contract, then I would follow up with this afterwards. This does not need to go with the offer.
Okay.
But this says who has what type of insurance. See, so where it says seller shall obtain and pay for a renter's policy. And that kind of is where I got that information. But it also has the details of if they're paying and how much.
Great. Perfect.
Let me just make sure there's no questions in the chat. Told you we'd go to 12:30, but you guys had great questions and commentary. So we're 12:35. I got lots of emails. I will get all of you guys these documents. I'll go ahead and I'll throw this this occupancy after a closing doc on there too. Let's see. I don't see any new questions except the one that says, can you email these to us? So is there anything else that I can share with you today?
You're great.
Ah, thanks.
Go Tabitha.
Heather, I see you. I know that you're here. I even saw you pop on screen for a second. I want to ask you a very special question. How many times did you see that I said, does that make sense? Did I say it a lot? She might be on the phone. So Heather helped me with my presentation skills when I was teaching career development at Capital Partners like years back. And she shared with me that I used to say that all the time. So guys, if you didn't have to hear me ask you if that made sense like 150 times in the last hour and a half, you can thank Heather. Right. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to leave the Zoom open for a couple minutes while I get all your emails pulled out of the chat. And I hope that you will keep going to Ignite. And I hope that you will come to any classes that we offer in the future.
Thank you very much.
So,
Thanks for being here and thanks for participating, guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Tabitha.
thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Elise, if you're still on here, leave this open so I can get all the emails out for everybody. Oh. All right. Hey, all right. I have everybody's emails that asked for them. I think that we are good. I'm gonna hop off and get going and I appreciate you. Have a great day. Happy Friday. Bye, guys.